Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a multifaceted and a well-respected professional from the US, Mr. Kevin Surace. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be here.
Thank you. Kevin is the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Technical Officer of Appvance.ai. He's also the chair of Token Ring. Kevin is an innovator, a serial entrepreneur, a CEO, a TV personality, and an edutainer. He has been featured by Business Week, Time, Fortune, Forbes, CNN, ABC, and MSNBC. And his forthcoming book is The Joy Success Cycle. So, Kevin, my first question to you: you built multiple billion-dollar companies from scratch. Could you share a defining moment in your entrepreneurial journey that significantly shaped your perspective on innovation?
Yes, well, there are many, right? But I'll give you there are many because innovation, specifically disruptive innovation, happens because of a company culture, and it took me a long time to understand that you've got to build the right culture for people to be willing to take risks and willing to take risks in front of you, in front of their boss, in front of the founder, whatever, and really question everything along the way. But I'll give you an example. You know, we were creating. As much as I've done a lot in technology, I also did some building material work for many years. And one of them was the invention of soundproof drywall. And in the midst of that, we wanted to make a product that would be easy to cut and what's called score in the field. Mm-hmm. And as many times, because that's what the customer wanted, right? That was the pain point. Mm-hmm. And basically, what people said is that would be impossible because of the way the structure is designed. So I had an idea that without breaking the laws of physics, we could make a product like this. And every time I went out of town for something, I would come back and the team would cancel the project saying it's impossible. It can't be done. And I said, no, it isn't. Come on, let's work on this again. Right. Because everything hard is like walking through a brick wall. And if I told you right now that you know you need to walk through a brick wall, the first thing you're going to say is that's impossible. Of course, it's not impossible if I allow you to go to the store, get a chainsaw, cut a hole in the brick wall, and go through it. My point of that story is if you have the right tools, including knowledge and other tools, you might be able to do it. So eventually, after telling that team that they had to continue, I had to remove the R&D leader of that team. I took it over, and you know, with a convincing thought that we're not breaking the laws of physics. We want to solve this. So indeed, we did solve it. It changed the industry. It's $1 billion industry today, and it can be done. And so lots and lots of people are going to tell you can't do things. When we invented, I'm known as the father of the virtual assistant, as you know, the AI virtual assistant. And when we invented the first one, it's called Portico. Her name was Mary in the late 90s. I mean, we had a big team, 65, 70 people working on it, spent more than $100 million. And people continue to say, what you're envisioning, Kevin, cannot be done. We cannot just talk to a computer and have it talk back. The way we do today, right? Like a Siri, but this is 30 years ago almost. But I said, we have to build the hardware. There's no cloud. We have to build the software. We have to work with state-of-the-art models, hidden Markov models and others. And we did build it in the end, but still there were many people that said it can't be done. And they didn't bring me any joy, so they had to leave. And then we keep going. So look, I think when you're trying to disrupt an industry, lots of people are going to tell you it cannot be done. And I could go through 10 more examples of this in everything I've done. And those people probably aren't meant to be in a startup, probably aren't meant to be part of that journey because they're not willing to take those risks. And that's okay. Go be part of a big company. You know, it's fine. It really is. We need people to be parts of big companies. Don't be part of this incredible disruptive journey.
Very well said. Kevin, you've also managed to bridge technology and creativity, even producing Broadway shows. How has your creative involvement in music and theater influenced your leadership style?
Oh, good, really good question. So, yes, I'm involved in Broadway and off Broadway and regional productions and film productions. I've got 2 films that I've been directly involved in, not just as an investor, but on the set. So where's that come from? Well, the first thing is I really wanted to go to school for music or for theater. My father rightly said no.
Okay.
That doesn't end well. That ends with you being a waiter somewhere, right? With all due respect to waiters.
Yeah.
So he said, look, you're really good at engineering. You should go to school for engineering. So I did electrical engineering or electronics and software is what I did. And at RIT in Rochester, New York, great school. And his point was you could always do your music and things on the side because you're never going to get paid for them anyway. So that is indeed what led me to do higher and higher level productions, and now being involved in productions that go to Broadway or go to the West End in London. And so how does that make me a different leader, say, in technology? It's really interesting. So first of all, I think the best engineers do have both sides, and we've tested this at RIT, where I'm still on the board, because we have this performing arts scholars program, and we found that engineers who come in and are part of the performing arts scholars program, where they get a little bit of a kind of a scholarship for their performing arts, actually perform better in engineering than those without. That is, if you come to the school and you're in musical theater, you sing, you dance, maybe you play a guitar, maybe you play drums, whatever. You end up, for whatever reason, having better scores in engineering than those who did not have both sides of their brain active. So we have 2 sides of the brain. Most of us are only using one of them.
Correct.
But what a wonderful thing to use both sides. And when you do that, I think it brings more empathy, more understanding. When I'm a leader, I've been an artistic director and a music director in theater. And the people you're leading there have a very different motivation than one might have at work. So, in a startup, it's we're going to be successful, and how much am I going to make on my stock, and whatever the deal is, we're going to change the world. And in a musical, it's we're going to entertain the audience. And how are we going to do that? And how are we going to bring this emotion on stage to grandma who's in the back row, right? How do we do that? And we talk about that all the time. How do we do it musically? How do we do it performance-wise? And so I'd say it can only help your leadership skills and style to have that much roundness in your life.
Well said. You also, in addition to being called the father of the virtual assistant, you were also one of the first people to introduce generative AI to the mainstream in 2017.
Yeah.
What was your vision at that time, and how has it changed, seeing the current explosion of Gen AI?
Yeah. So the Gen AI we see today is based on a transformer. And while the transformer itself technically existed in 2017 for translation, at a company I lead called Appvance, we were not using a transformer to generate in a very specific way. In fact, and we couldn't generate English. We were generating new test cases and new test scripts simply from a learning phase. So we could train the AI about an application and then say, go generate thousands of tests that will mimic user flows through that application. That's called AI script generation. And so we had a form of generative AI, not based on a transformer, so not exactly the same as you talking to it. But if you were in QA and in an hour, it generated 12,000 new tests for you, wrote them and ran them, you're blown away. That is complete generative AI in this way, because it generates a brand new output from very little input, and you have to do nothing, just wait for the computer to finish. So we were the first to do that. We're still the only ones in the QA space to do that. And we've extended that lead now, leveraging 5 transformers and another model we call Genie that understands English language input for tests, what's called test cases, and generates the scripts as output. That is both good and bad. It is amazing from an enterprise standpoint, because an enterprise may have millions of test cases that have to be automated. It's not good from the standpoint of people, a lot of them in India, people like Wipro and Tata, whose job it is to do that conversion or to do that manual testing today.
Yeah.
That is going to be AI. I mean, I can't change the fact the world is going to eliminate certain tasks and then give us new tasks, right? Correct. And that's what's happening in the AI world.
Great response. Thank you. Kevin, with generative AI's capability for unprecedented creativity, how can businesses leverage it without compromising human ingenuity?
Well, look, every technology that we've had, from the wheel to Excel, has eliminated some tasks, but created higher level strategic tasks.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. And so when we look at Excel, when Excel showed up, we had millions of people around the world with a pen or a pencil creating ledger books for finance. Within 5 years, no one had ledger books done this way. It was all done either in Excel or QuickBooks or whatever, right? So software took over that task, creating more opportunity for people in finance to be strategic instead of tactical. So no longer were you adding up the pennies. Now there's a machine that does that part. But now you could step back and look at where the pennies went and say, are we spending our money correctly? So we have lots of history of this, right? Okay, the PC comes to the desktop. When was that? Late 80s. Early 90s for some people, but you had a PC on your desktop at that point. That completely, virtually eliminated secretarial pools. If you remember long enough, we had big pools of secretary, and you could go there and they would type your stuff, and you would talk to them, and they would take notes, and that's what they did. And they might do your calendar and things like answer your phone. All of a sudden, I don't need most of that. I have a PC, and I'm expected now to type. I'm not even a good typer, but we're all expected to type, right? And so that took away the secretarial pool. But those people, it used to be women, it could be women and men, whatever, went on to a different set of careers, maybe in marketing, maybe in sales, maybe in back office operations, etc. So I think we're going to see that same thing. If you are in tier 1 customer support today, I know you've done a good job. I know that you're dedicated to the company. I can tell you as I sit here, that job won't be here. That task won't be here because AI virtual assistants or chatbots, frankly, do that by the measurements at least as well and often better than humans can do for a whole set of reasons. It's faster. It's more accurate. Using something called RAG, it reads the FAQs and it knows what the answers are. And customers are just as happy. And if they want tier 2 or 3, they'll push the button and get that. So tier 1 is probably gone. So that gives you an opportunity to go into marketing, to go into sales, or go into tier 2 or tier 3. And there may be more calls that go to tier 2 or 3. But the job of tier 1 customer support will go away. I can guarantee this. Just like in the field that I'm doing a lot of work in now, software QA, the manual testing person, as well as the QA automation engineer, is mostly going to go away. It's not 100%. But it may be 80% or 90%. This is a given, right? We can see this, landing strip, right? The plane is landing. We can see that. So it's good to find other things to do. And unfortunately, this is what happens when you make corporations, enterprises more productive than they were before. They now have more output at a lower cost. More output at a lower cost actually creates more high-level opportunity and more jobs, but they're just not the same jobs. Okay, one last one. GM employs more people today than they did in 1961, General Motors. In 1961, they introduced the first robot. And people said, that's it. No one will be working at GM in 10 years. Well, no. What happened is they drove down the cost of a car from what would be $300,000 today to call it $15,000 or $20,000. Why? Because you're automating much of the manufacturing process. Not all of it, but the ones that you can do. And you employ more people because you're selling literally 100 times more cars than you would have been able to without the automation. So every time we bring in this kind of automation, we drive down costs and we drive up demand, and that increases the higher level jobs. So I think that's going to happen again because it's happened every time, in the past.
Fascinating. When I started talking to you 15 minutes ago, I had called you multifaceted in my introduction. We've spoken about technology. We've spoken about Broadway, and I want to talk to you about sustainability. You
Mhm.
spearheaded sustainability projects like retrofitting iconic buildings like the
Yeah,
Empire State Building.
true.
What insights can businesses learn from these initiatives to scale
Well,
sustainable practices?
yeah. So our buildings overall, the built environment is responsible for roughly 52% of all CO2. And people are going to say that can't be. Well,
Hmm.
let me tell you why it can be. First of all, cement itself is about 5% of the world's CO2. So every time I build a building with cement, I'm contributing to that 5%. 5% is a very big number.
Yeah.
The second thing is that buildings have heating, have cooling, and have lighting. Okay,
Hmm.
heating, cooling, and lighting.
Yeah.
And while we don't often attribute it to buildings, that power plant down the street,
Hmm.
all that power is going to buildings. Some of it in some areas might go to manufacturing, but all the rest is going to buildings, your home or the place you work, right?
Hmm.
All of it. So every power plant in the land is primarily producing power, primarily to heat and cool and light buildings.
Hmm.
So when you add all that up, of course, it's the majority of the CO2 impact in the world is our buildings. So the best thing we can do in the built environment is fix the envelope. And the biggest envelope leakage is windows. So windows are measured with a U value, but if you put it back in R value, we have walls that are typically R12, R15, R20, R30 sometimes, but in that range. And the windows are R2 or R3, and those are dual pane. So we invented windows that were R9 and R11 and R14 and R20, right? So we invented really high R value windows. We put them in the Empire State Building and some 70,000 other projects.
Mm-hmm.
And the Empire State Building got their money back on cooling savings in 3 years.
Wow.
In 3 years.
Wow.
And that was 6,566 windows. It's really fascinating. So you have to look at the built environment. That is where all the energy goes. People say, what about cars? Believe it or not, cars themselves take trucks and trains and other transportation and air out of it. Passenger cars are about 9% of the world's CO2. It's very small compared to the built environment.
Incredible. And what great data for me and my audience. 52% of the challenges come from buildings.
Including building the buildings, right? So every year we're tearing down buildings and we're building new ones, and we don't use much of the old building. There's not much recycled.
Absolutely.
So all of the embedded carbon that went in to making the building, and you have to calcine cement. So you have a huge fire to create cement that will cure.
Correct.
And our buildings have tons of cement, tons, and it's a very cheap product. In fact, the cost of cement is simply driven by the cost of energy.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
So it's a fascinating thing. So like I said, you got to include all of the materials that went in the building, plus heating and cooling and lighting the building. And then you go, wow, the buildings, and most of us have two buildings. We have a place we work, we have a place we live, and we're not in any two at the same time. So in fact, we've got double the carbon footprint.
Absolutely.
Unless we live at work or we work at home, right?
Absolutely. One more question relating to sustainability, and then I want to move to your book. Kevin, as a sustainability advocate, where do you see untapped opportunities for businesses to significantly reduce their environmental footprint?
Yeah. So look, when you look at a business, you have manufacturing, and you have CO2 involved in that. And some of that we don't have easy replacements for yet. So for instance, if you make steel, let's just say you got to light a fire and it's going to be a fossil fuel fire, right? There's nothing else to burn. So we don't know how to make steel without fire. We don't know how to make cement without fire, right? There's just a lot of things that we cannot do. And so you can't fix that. You can fix your built environment. You can certainly look at people coming to work, because the carbon footprint of people driving to work and driving back, can they come in EVs? Can you provide EV charging? Can they work from home a few days a week? All of those things are pretty interesting. But in the end, it's going to be windows in your buildings is the number one thing you can do. LED lighting is a given. Most people went to fluorescent, and most people have moved to LED over the last decade. Those are the things you can do, but you got to reduce your heating and cooling. You got to and that reduces your cost.
Yeah.
Right. That's the biggest thing you can do as a business. I know people, They contribute for recycling, and that's all nice, but much of that doesn't have a huge impact on CO2. It's heating and cooling your building and lighting your building. Those are the big things.
Well said. Let's now talk about your book. Your forthcoming book is titled The Joy Success Cycle, and it suggests that joy directly impacts productivity. Can you explain why you consider joy as a strategic business advantage rather than just as a personal piece of advice?
Absolutely. Let's take two businesses. One of them, everyone in the business complains about most everything and uses a lot of energy complaining, both internal complaints that they've said to themselves, as well as external ones at the water cooler or between offices, or between cubes, or whatever it is, right? By the way, what I just described is the typical business. People like to complain. They naturally like to complain. We do that because we are a product of our ancestors, and our ancestors who were scared that a lion was behind the tree are the ones who survived, and this is why we survived today. Right? The ones that weren't worried about anything got eaten by the lion. So we know we're a product of. But compare that business to one that is living the joy success cycle. The joy success cycle at its core says, I only get one complaint a day. One. At home, at work, doesn't matter. Choose it carefully, right? So if you get out of bed and you go, my knees hurt, you've already used up your one. Now, part of this is a trick on the mind, right? Is a gamification of this. Because once you realize you've used up your one, you will go, I can't do that anymore. So now all day at work, every task, every person, everything you say, how do I look at this from a point of joy? And what that does is it builds up what we call our positive quotient points. And as we build up those points, we get more efficient and more productive because we're not wasting any energy on, oh, I don't like the government. Oh, I don't like this cube mate. Oh, I don't like this assignment. Oh, I don't like my boss. Oh, I don't. By the way, nobody cares at all, actually. I mean, the truth is, we talk about this, nobody actually cares. We know that we all complain, and nobody cares about any of the complaints. So let's stop doing that. And all, this book came out of people asking me, how did you get to 95 worldwide patents now? I said, well, and I started to dissect it. I said, well, my mind is always open to go solve problems. Why is your mind always open? Why isn't everyone's mind always open, right? Well, let's look at that. And you start to dissect it, and you go, oh, I live by a set of rules that have worked. They really work. And then I started passing, I'm a keynote speaker, I do 30, 40 keynotes a year. And I started passing this on in my keynotes. And then people said, you got to put this all in a book. There's too much to absorb in an hour keynote talk. So that's the genesis of the book. And there's a lot, there's 13 chapters. So there's a lot to learn. And I give examples in all of them. But it is a roadmap. And if you follow the roadmap, you come out the other end for sure with your highest level of success that you can achieve.
Fascinating. And when do you expect the book to be published?
As soon as I'm done with it.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, my next question.
I hope in the next 6 months, publishers also put their own timelines on things. So we will see.
Yeah, the publishers can take their own time. My next question is, Kevin, that you've emphasized joy as a solution to the relentless hustle culture.
Yeah.
Could you share an example of a time when focusing on joy led directly to measurable success in your career?
Yeah, sure. I probably many times, right? So look, we never want to take away the fact that, let's say you're an entrepreneur and let's say you've got a startup, let's just say, right, that you're going to work really hard and you're going to work a lot of hours, okay? But it's all how you approach those hours. Are you approaching it like, I've just got to hustle faster, I've got to hustle faster? You can also work smarter rather than faster, by the way. But the smartest thing you can do is say, so I do to-do lists, right? This is what I do. I always do to-do lists. And on those to-do lists every night, I know I'm going to check things off. And I write next to them, here's a joy moment, a joy moment, a joy moment. Okay. So we can all look at every task and say, this is horrific or this can be joyful. And that goes down to me firing people over the years. We all have to fire or lay off people, even people that we adore. It's just that what got us here in this business might not get us there. We're only getting so far. And I always approach that like this, and this is a direct example, is I love you, you're amazing, but and I know that we need something different, a different set of skills going forward. And I'm going to help you find your next job. I'm going to be the best promoter of you, but we're both going to be happier, ending this part of our relationship. We're going to be friends the rest of our lives, but ending this part of our relationship. Now, of course, they leave and they say, I'm never going to be his friend. And, all that for that one day. But actually, 3 months later, always they come back and say, you know what? You were absolutely right. I wasn't happy. I knew it. I wasn't doing a great job. I didn't have the right skills. I was being pushed in ways I couldn't do, blah, blah, blah. Right. So there was no joy in their lives. And they couldn't get any joy because they were being asked the things they couldn't be successful at. So that's an example I share, and it's a real example, but it's a real example that I've done many, many, many times. And it's just a different way to approach the problem. Instead of, oh my God, I've got to fire someone today. It's so hard. Forget it. So yes, you're going to hustle. Yes, you're going to achieve things. Also on to-do lists, you want to check things off. This is part of the hustle. The best part of the hustle culture is put 10 things on your list and check them off and feel great about checking off your tasks for today and moving on to the next day.
Fascinating. Kevin, I have time for only one more question. You got so much to talk about and there's so much to learn from you. I could just keep talking, but I only have time for one more question. And this is for you personally. You've been recognized as CNBC's top innovator of the decade and inducted into RIT's Innovation Hall of Fame. What personal qualities or practices do you attribute most to achieving such milestones?
Well, I'll tell you, there are a lot of people way smarter than me. There are many, many people who've done a lot more than me and a lot more that's more important to society, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But something they don't teach you in school is EQ. And it's something I've had to learn. So everyone knows what IQ is. And I give this example when I was speaking at Stanford last time to a master's group, GSB. I said, look around. And they all look around. I said, look at the student next to you. Look at the ones behind you. Yeah. They're here. They are all wickedly smart. I'm going to bet that all of you have an IQ of 135, picking a number, right? So how are you going to differentiate yourself? Because it's not with IQ.
Yeah.
You're all high IQ.
Correct.
So if you want to lead and this was your group, you're going to have to do something else better. And so you better start to really get into EQ, understand how to listen, understand how to bring joy to teams, understand that how you move up in an organization is because the people around you want to move you up.
Yeah.
So, the way you end up as CNBC's this and RIT Hall of Fame and sort of all the other awards, Davos and et cetera, is you have to be likable, like really likable and funny and fun and tell good stories. And like that's part of building all that. I guess the very old book. So I just read this yesterday. Someone's favorite book still is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie. I don't know. The book is from the 1940s or something.
Yeah.
There is nothing incorrect in that book today.
Correct.
Because you can have all the IQ in the world, but the highest IQ that makes everyone else angry at you never moves up in the organization. In fact, they move out. So you want to move up in life, you got to have great EQ and stop complaining.
Absolutely. And on that note, and your incredible words of wisdom at the end, have high EQ and stop complaining. Thank you, Kevin, for speaking to me about your own incredible journey. I mean, I've seldom met a person who has so much knowledge in such diverse subjects, from technology to sustainability to Broadway, theater, music, and of course, someone who's in the process of writing a book. We covered a lot of very interesting ground, and I'm just grateful for all your thoughts and all your wisdom on my program. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.